Hello and welcome to Noni, YANGA's flagship talk show where we discuss all the hot topics. Today we take a look at the rise of the female entrepreneur and we ask who are your children's role models as we take a look at the importance of empowering young people. And as usual, we're inviting you to join in with your comments and views. So if you want to get involved, drop us a line on Instagram and on Twitter at YANGA_UK. Joining me on today's show, the co-founder of Women for Africa, Tola Onigbanjo, also known as Wise Tola, and education to employment specialist and founder of ACES project, Donia. Narh. Nice to see you guys, looking lovely. Now, the traditional role of the African woman was to look after the children at home. Business was a man's world, but things have changed over time. These days, there are more women in business and more female entrepreneurs than ever before. Tola, let me start with you first, because I'm sure your face is familiar to lots of our viewers. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was at Women for Africa and I was shocked. And good shocked, purely because it was well put together. You were celebrating women. It seemed to go seamlessly. But of course, I know to put on an event like that takes a big step. How did it go from just a thought to a huge award that's been going 7 years now?
I think for me, it was really about passion. I think when you're passionate about something, you really don't think about any obstacles that are going to pop up along the way or anything like that. You're just thinking, I really want to do this thing. I want to do this. I want to do this. And you just go for it. So I think from the idea stage that just came in my bedroom one night, you know, to me tapping my husband and saying, look, we've got to do this. I'm
not nagging. This is something.
Yeah. I'm passionate about women. You're passionate about Africa. Let's do this. We need to create this platform where we can celebrate and elevate ordinary women. And it just went from there to where it is now.
I'm sure most people would know, but for those who don't, tell us what Women for Africa actually is.
Women for Africa is the celebration of the ordinary woman who is doing extraordinary things. And it's a platform where people can come and celebrate ordinary women. I think it's important that, you know, when you have a woman that is achieving, a woman that's doing something, people need to see, people need to know. And I think people get inspired by such women. And for me, it was like everyone's celebrating Beyonce, they're celebrating Alicia Keys, they're celebrating all these amazing women. They know them, they get awards all the time, but no one knows the ordinary woman. No one knows the Donia and what she's doing, what she's achieving. And she can be a role model, she can be an example for the young girl that's growing up and wants to aspire to achieve and also be celebrated for her achievements. And that's what Women for Africa is about.
Somebody like you, Tola, and it goes nicely into Donia, because I know you are a recipient of a Women for Africa award. Yeah. Tell us about the projects you undertake and how difficult it's been, but how you've been able to achieve it as a woman.
So I do a lot of work with young people. I'm an education to employment specialist.
Wow.
And I go into schools and work with the young people. And now I work more with the parents as well, getting them to know how to help their children to excel in education and then employment. And yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years. And getting the award at Women for Africa was just phenomenal, because a lot of times you don't see a great representation of us in the media or being recognized specifically. And I was sitting in the audience and there were all these amazing women getting up and I was just like, wow, you know, it was just so exciting. So it's just wonderful.
And you were one of them. And Donia, you said that you work in schools. Do you see a difference between what boys, young males say they want to do and what young women say they want to do? Are there stereotypes? A woman kind of saying, I want to be a nurse and I want to do this, not saying, you know, I want to work in banking, I want to be a doctor.
Funnily enough, it's not the case anymore. I find that women are going for the engineering, they're going for the banking, or the young girls are saying that they want to do those things. I think what's interesting is that you then look at it at the end results. At the beginning, they want to do it, and at the end, you're like, where are the women in the boardroom? So you're like, what happened?
But Tola, you mentioned your husband, Sam, who again is really popular within the community. You know, when you're trying to organise the event, do you think people treat him differently? If he makes a phone call, are people going to answer faster than they do for you, or has that changed?
I think one of the things that we do is we've identified our strengths and we've identified our weaknesses. So he works in the areas of his strength, I work in the areas of my strength.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that has worked is that when he does pick up the phone and a woman calls and think, oh, Women for Africa, it's a man on the phone. But once they hear his passion and how he wants to celebrate and elevate the ordinary woman, they're kind of like blown away, like, wow, this is a guy that wants to celebrate us women. So the conversation kind of like just changes, and now they're more into, oh, yes, women, we should be celebrating ourselves. So when a woman says, oh, I'm going to do a woman's thing, it's natural. But then a man to stand up and say, you know what, we're going to do this women's thing, it's not that common. So I think they take to it a lot more.
It's true. And Donia, they say black women are the fastest growing entrepreneur in Britain. Why do you think that is? Some say it's because, they're at home, they've got kids, they can't work a typical 9 to 5. So they're finding things to do. We all know those people selling hair on Instagram, doing makeup. They never could do makeup before, but they've learned all the tips. But they're entrepreneurs now, aren't they?
Yeah. So I think it's something to do with, the parenting, working around your children as well. I think we're quite homely, isn't it? And we want to see our children growing up, especially bringing up black children in the UK as well, with all that's going on. You want to know where they are. So I think at this time, we have that kind of more opportunities to work from home. I think that's certainly it. And also, I think, going back to what I was saying about the girls and being capped at a certain point, that ceiling, I think when you are working in the corporate world, you find that there might be a ceiling. Yes. And then you turn to entrepreneurship because you realise actually...
There is no ceiling with that. But do you think, Tola, very quickly, that there are difficulties for female entrepreneurs, particularly black ones, when it comes to having good credit? You may have made mistakes in the past, so you can't get the loan, where it should be so easy for you to set yourself up. There are obstacles.
Definitely. I think one of the ways that we try and overcome that is by turning to entrepreneurship. And when we can start things that we don't necessarily have to go and get a loan from the bank, and things that have ruined our credit in the past. And I think that is why as well, one of the reasons why, and like Donia said as well, where you get to the corporate and there's a cap, whereas in entrepreneurship, it's kind of like the sky's your limit. You go as far as you want to go.
Gosh,
basically.
I think we should leave it there and pick up with talking about how we big ourselves up a little bit after the break. Coming up, more on being the female boss, and we take a look at the ways we can empower our children and the importance of role models. More after the break. Welcome back to Noni. Still to come on today's show, who are the role models your children look up to? But first, let's get back to our conversation about female entrepreneurship. Tola, years ago, a lot of people would say, God, women don't support women, especially black women. You'd go into a workplace, if there was another black woman, you'd be like, I've got to avoid her if she's senior because she's going to come down on me. But it's true, isn't it? That was the conversation. Has it changed?
To a certain extent, I feel it has, but I still feel we still have a way to go in terms of women supporting women.
Why is that? What is it about a fear? Or is it just a perception that women don't support women? Because, of course, with what Tola's doing on Women for Africa, she clearly is supporting women of colour.
Yeah. I think there is that perception that women are not supporting women. I find that increasingly, like you do with Women for Africa, I'm thinking I'm where I am because there was a woman, Caroline Marsh, she was on The Secret Millionaire. She was just very open, supported me, anytime, any contact. You name it, even the dragons or whatever. She was very open. So I think it's about finding that right woman, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think you can, sometimes we're in entrepreneurship, but we'll go to people who are not entrepreneurs, and they're not necessarily open-minded or understand what you're doing, so they're not going to necessarily.
It's true, it's interesting, because even me, and I suppose we can all agree, if you look back, it was always one woman, wasn't it, somewhere that just kind of pulled you up the ladder. But people don't really, talk about that much. What about motherhood? We're all mothers here. Do you think that can be, preventative in making a success of your life? You kind of have the kids, and then, you get a little bit, not lazy, but you're scrutinised.
Well, I've never allowed it to affect me, put it that way. I am the type of person that, yes, I have the kids, but I'm still one of those go-getters. If I want to do something, I look at, right, how am I going to do this, and how am I going to factor in the kids and still have time for the kids and still do what I need to do in order to achieve. But it's not every woman that feels that way, because there are a lot of mothers that are working in jobs, but they're working because they have to pay the bills, and they have the children and they have to take care of their children, but they still have dreams, they have aspirations, there's things that they want to do, and they need that support. And I think that's where we can come in as well and support such women too.
It's true, because, you know, on the one side we see statistics, Donia, that say black women are the fastest growing entrepreneurs. But then, of course, sometimes if you go back to work too early, you're judged. You know, it's like you have a child and they're like, stay at home with the baby. Is the baby on breast? You know, I've had all of that. And sometimes you can kind of feel pulled. You know, you want to make it big, but then you want to please the Joneses as well and act like the perfect African Caribbean wife.
Yeah, I think there is that element of it as well, where you know, do I stay, do I go, what, you know, how to move forward. And that's why it is good to have mentors and people who can guide you and say, actually, here are these options. And I was thinking, actually, I wanted to be the stay-at-home mum for my children. Again, working in education, I was like, I don't want to be in education all this time and my children are running wild and being crazy, you know, I want to be around them. And I said to a lady, I'm going to stop what I'm doing, going to work with my children. And I remember it was a white British lady, and she's like, and I was working in employment at the time, she's like, look around you. Look how many women have stayed with their children and cannot go back into work.
Yes.
And she said, whatever you do, keep one foot in work and still work with your children. And that's an advice I listen to. And in fact, what I do, I worked around the children, like you said, rather than just coming out completely. And it was like the best decision.
Yes,
really,
gosh,
you know.
I agree. I'm mother of 3. You know, I have a 6-month-old, and I'm here today, this morning, early. But Tola, you know, what advice would you give to women who are watching? They could be young and old. You know, they don't have much money, but they have a skill, and they just think, you know, they can never do it. How do you take that next step?
Don't look at, oh, everyone's doing it. Everyone that's doing it can still not service all the people that need to be serviced when it comes to whether it's buying hair, whether it's buying makeup, or whether it's buying clothes. I mean, I'm wearing a dress today from one designer, you're wearing something from someone else, and Donia's wearing something from someone else. So we don't all shop in the same place. So whatever it is, I'd say take the step and just go out and do it.
Gosh, I think I'm going to follow your advice. Hopefully you'll see me here tomorrow. It's a really interesting discussion, ladies. Now, if you could wave a magic wand and choose who your kids grow up to be, who would you choose? And how difficult is it to ensure your children reach their full potential in life? I don't want to mention her name, not because I'm not a fan, Tola, but I've got to say Beyonce. You know, on the one side, we're all kind of hashtagging Beychella. She's great. I am personally a fan. But then, you know, the younger the children get, when you look at some of the videos, you're like, okay, you know, oh, she's half naked. Oh, she's gyrating. Where do you stand on her being a role model for young black women today?
Well, I think it depends what they're looking at when they're looking at her as a role model. I mean, I'm a fan of Beyonce's music. I love her music, and that's what I'm a fan of. I mean, when it comes to, in terms of her dressing, I probably don't watch much of what she does, so I don't see much of what she wears unless it's all over the media and, you know, someone's highlighting it. But her music, yes, I listen to. But I think the thing is, we might say it's Beyonce out there, but we have to look at it. There's a whole load of women that are role models, that our children looking up to as role models, that are in the same category, maybe not dressing appropriately as some of us parents would probably have it. But I think in terms of when we're guiding our children and they're looking at role models, like if my daughter comes to me and says, oh, Mom, I really love Beyonce, I really, you know, I say to her, what is it that you love about her? And then I listen to what she loves about her. If she says, oh, I really love the way she's dressing, then obviously we're going to have that conversation. If she's like, I just love the way she's confident when she's performing, I love her music and things like that. So I'm going to have to ask her what exactly it is that she's looking at her and what she loves about her in particular, because she might not really be looking at her dressing. I don't really look at her dressing, but I love her music. I'm a fan of her music. So I think sometimes we have to see what it is, because even though they say, oh, this is a role model, there's actually something that they admire in that person. It might not be what we're looking at, and it might not even be the music or the dressing. It could be something else that they've noticed in her that we haven't. So I think it's important to have that conversation.
Thank you, Tola. And it's good that you put it in context, because Donia, you know, a lot of people do say that Beyonce is used as a scapegoat for the white-out media and saying, oh, you know, look at this half-naked lady that black women are looking up to, but then she is talented and she's broken many records and we can't take that away from her. But you work in education. Do you think young black children in schools today need to be educated on you know, role models and people who are doing well that are not just athletes, they're not just singers, you know, they're people who are breaking molds in science and in engineering and in math?
Yeah, oh no, definitely. And I think you know, when you're thinking about Beyonce as well, you know, in fairness to her, she's a performer.
Yes.
She's an entertainer, and parents need to understand that she's doing her job. Yeah. Not to say that, you know, we shouldn't think, okay, is she the right role model or not, certainly. I think it's really important because with the projects that I do, say for example, ACES projects, there's a strong focus on culture. And I think one thing that parents do, which is quite unfair, is expect the school system to teach their children about the role models, about the, you know, about the engineers and the athletes and so forth, because you're asking a predominantly British culture to teach you about your culture. Yeah. And what they tend to do is focus on the empire and slavery, which is part of their culture.
Well, they kind of miss out slavery. It's all World War I and everything before them was peachy. But
you know, we're coming from kings and queens, and the children need to know that. And I find that when we go into schools and we work with the young people and we tell them, even when I was teaching as a history teacher, and they started at slavery, I started Africa from before that. And I even talked about, you know, 100 AD, Emperor Septimus was a black African and half Italian.
Get my pen and paper here.
No, it's a history lesson, so this one's important. He was the Emperor of Britain.
Wow.
Half African, half Italian. So if we go back, even in British history, there's so much to tell the children, but the parents have got to do it. So it's okay. We put on Beyonce on TV and complain. Get the books out, get the movies out. There's so much on YouTube that they can watch.
So it starts at home, really. Is that kind of what we're saying then, Tola?
Yes, definitely. I would say we have to start somewhere, and we can't rely on the school because there's a limit to what they can teach our children, you know, and they have a curriculum that they follow. Yeah. But I think at home as parents, there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot that we can impart in our children. There's a lot that we can teach them. For example, Women for Africa, all the table names this year were named after African queens, African princesses that dated to way back. And I made my daughter get the little two free lines about each African queen, African princess, so that I could put it on social media alongside the table name just to educate people. So she was getting an education while she was doing that, you know, and things like that. So you can get them involved in ways that are not so tedious or, oh, this is a bit boring. It's like, okay, right, Nicole, we need the table names. Can you get two free lines about this woman? I give her the name, she goes and finds out.
And that's how you educate themselves. Yes. So Donia, you know, again, you work in the academic field. Who are some black role models that, you know, come to mind that you think we should be looking at, or the press should be kind of pushing forward?
You don't want to start me off?
Can we do this century, please?
Oh, this century. You know, I think it's a range, isn't it? Yeah. So you've got the Oprahs, you've got the Obamas. In the UK, Idris Elba, for example. You've got lots of people, scientists as well. I can think of scientists now who, they're local heroes, so to speak, just like you celebrate a Woman for Africa that you may not see on the TV, but they are there and they're achieving and they're inventors. There are lots of, I think there's a man who's invented a new bike lock, for example. He's a black entrepreneur. And I would think that parents, again, I always go back because they're the first teachers, can find role models around them, friends that they know, friends of friends, to say, look, you want to go into engineering, this person's an engineer. We don't have to just look out to, you know, those who are on, like you say, the celebrities and athletes and things like that.
Of course.
You know,
and, you know, Tola, you very well known in the younger community because, of course, you kind of are hailed as bringing Afrobeats over into the UK when you were at the Beats FM. Yes, you was. So with the young kind of crowd, are there any people that you think, yeah, you know, you should be taking note from them, this person's doing great, rather than just Beyonce?
Well, I would definitely say every woman that is awarded on the Women for Africa platform, yes.
Tick.
Definitely. They're awarded for something that they're doing and they're an inspiration in one way, shape or form. And then I just believe it's a case of more exposure to a lot more people. I mean, I can name a few, but then there's a lot more that I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's really about being out there and doing your research and finding these people. Like, I didn't know it was a black guy that's now invented a new bike lock, you know. So it's really about where this information is available and finding out this information and then presenting it to our children.
And it's about spending time with our kids, isn't it? And it's not a problem, but I think that the reality is for people in our community, we work in a lot, you know, a lot of parents doing shift work, you know, latchkey kids, leaving home at 7 o'clock to do that 12-hour nursing shift. And they just haven't got the time to spend with their kids, to get them off the tablet. So they're not just on YouTube, they're exploring with them, going to museums, reading the books. Would you say that that can be an issue with the black community?
Yeah, I think it is a big issue, but it's like, you know, it's so paramount now with all that's going on that parents are there. And I think sometimes we've got to be creative as well. What's really great about our community is that we got this extended family. Yeah. And we always, or extended friends. And it's like, okay, if Tola is not there, then can she call on me to do something? Can I fill in? And we support each other. Like you were saying, women supporting women or parents supporting parents. And that's one way to actually get around the fact that you do have to work, you have to be there. But you can never be too busy for your children. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so last question. It's they've been niggling in my ear to ask this. But if you were to wave a magic wand, who would you say is kind of the perfect black role model for women today? Just one person from each of you.
I'd have to say myself, Tola Onigbanjo.
I think that's a good one. And Donia?
Yeah, I think I'm going to join you and say,
yeah, we're good enough, aren't we?
Why not?
I think
because you don't know the people behind the perception.
Exactly. I think the three of us are strong representations of black women today.
Yes,
well, that's it from me, Juliana Olayinka, and my guests this morning, Tola Onigbanjo and Donia Narh. Don't forget, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Join me next time for more Noni Chat. Goodbye.